Thank you very much for being here. I know literally you have just hot-footed it from an airport for the start of your London tour.
Yeah, it was really exciting. Getting off the plane, getting into a car and racing over to London. And
I changed my pants in the car.
yeah, I was literally changing my shirt in the car and
And can I just say
5 minutes left.
the American translation of pants is different in the UK, but you mean trouser pants, don't you?
Oh,
Wait, what are pants?
That would be your underpants.
Oh.
Oh.
But maybe you did. Maybe I've just...
That was an overshare, sorry.
So the lovely thing is the audience have just watched, and we've been talking with them, and they really loved The Good Dinosaur.
Oh, great.
Really, really loved it.
Oh,
Can I have one more? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the other thing we shared before you arrived was obviously Denise has been here already and was here with Cars 2.
Yes.
And you haven't been here before to the BFI, but we were talking about the fact that you had voiced Emil in Ratatouille, you'd voiced Squishy in Monsters University.
Yeah, that's right.
And one thing we didn't share was you voiced one of the characters in The Good Dinosaur.
That's right.
Can you tell us about that?
We were pitching a character that if you could imagine Arlo 40 years down, like if he was just lost out there forever and scared of everything, if you could imagine a crazy character. And the voice came from kind of joking around in school where he was just a little more kind of crazy out there and just wanted everything. And I played the pet collector character who had, Fury and this is Spot. But it was I didn't want to do it in the beginning. It was just like, this is my first time directing something. We'll get a proper actor. And John Lasseter was like, no, you'll do it. It's really funny. No, we'll get a real actor. And like, no, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do. Okay, all right, and then. Yeah.
Now, one thing we've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people from Pixar over the years, and one thing that always seems to come up is that even though the end result is always amazing, there are always hiccups along the way, and,
Yes.
and that's been the same, I think, with nearly every of the great productions. But that was the same with this one, wasn't it? There was Bob Peterson who was originally directing it, and he kind of had pitched some stuff, but it didn't seem to be working. Just tell us a little bit about that and how you came onto the project. 'Cause I know you were already working at Pixar for years and years. And
I've been at Pixar for 15 years, but Bob Peterson was one of my mentors, and I worked with him on Up as a storyboard artist and developing the project with him. And then during that time, I left Up to make a short, Partly Cloudy, and then from there, Bob finished Up, and then he started in around 2009. He pitched several ideas to John Lasseter and the other directors to get a feature going, and one of them was this dinosaur idea of a really boy and dog story, but flipping it, the concept that's in the film now. And then he would soon after ask me to come help develop the project, and for several years we got that going. And the issue was we had the boy and dog story, then we also had a father-son story going on, then we had the idea of the community changing, kind of like a Footloose story going on, and then we had a whole other meeting of a tribal kind of Dancing with Wolves story going. It became so complicated that the story had no way to go. And yeah, you're right, at Pixar that happens a lot on films, and you always get to this place, and then they asked me to take over, and Denise came on, and one of the first things we did was simplify the story kind of back to the heart, because I wanted to honor what Bob had done, and he's a great friend, and he's still there at Pixar, and so he was always there to support as well. And so we kind of stripped everything out, brought it back to that original kind of concept, and then from there kind of would redo and rework the film to what it is now.
And one of the real beauties about the film, amongst the many beauties, is the fact that actually, as you say, in its sort of stripped back form, there are sequences where there is almost no dialogue at all, and it's very much relying on both the visual and the amazing sound effects that come through and so forth. And that was obviously something you kind of consciously, but what kind of inspired those kind of sequences?
Yeah, when we started all over, basically, we stopped the whole production. We went on a research trip out to the Northwest, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon area, and we were really inspired by the landscape and sort of the beauty of the environments. And when we came back from there, we decided that we definitely wanted nature to sort of be the antagonist of the story. And it basically, when we came back and pitched some of the early concepts to John and the rest of the Brain Trust, we had watched Never Cry Wolf, the Carol Ballard films, and Black Stallion, and we really loved how those films really didn't use a lot of dialogue, so that was something that we thought would be really exciting to do. It's something different, and personally that was what I was really thrilled about, just the challenge of that from a production and sort of creative perspective.
And is it true that when you were on your research trips that you got lost?
Yeah, that was one of the mandates sort of to the guides. I wanted Pete to feel like, to know what it felt like to get lost as much as you can contrive something like that. But we went on a really epic trail ride up into the back of the Grand Tetons and on horseback, and that was quite of an adventure.
Yeah, I grew up in New York City, and I had never been out into the woods or on a horse or on a river or on any of that kind of thing. And you know, what was funny was I only saw it in the movies. You know, my mother loved movies, and so we would watch Westerns all the time. So when we actually went to where they shot some of these films, you know, like for me, watching something from horizon to horizon was essentially like a McDonald's to like a subway station. But then going out there, it was you know, like it was just so soul enriching that you could feel landscapes that could just go for hundreds of miles all the way around you, and you know, that whole concept of big sky, and that it would dwarf you, and you would feel your soul literally growing as you're looking at this place. But then at the same time, everywhere we would go, you'd point out something like, look at that beautiful mountain, and the guide would go, a landslide kind of devastated that half of the mountain, and that's how it was created. And then like, oh, look at this area here, look at these rocks, a rock slide happened here, you don't want to camp here, and all this kind of, everywhere we would go that there was something so gorgeous and beautiful, there was this underlying kind of, you know, threats of this kind of life in the balance here. And so that's something that really hit us, of the duality of nature, and that really was something that inspired us. How do we make a film that we can respect nature? A lot of dinosaur movies were about, at the end of it was about like, you know, a T-Rex or some carnivore coming at you, but we really were fighting for something emotional, and the experiences that we had out there really kind of inspired, boy, we could find something with Mother Nature and make her feel alive in a way that...
And in a way that other studios have not kind of achieved. What you've managed to do with T-Rexes, you've obviously had Toy Story and now Good Dinosaur, that T-Rexes can be the good guys.
Oh, yeah. We really love that. I mean, look, we kind of did this film in 2 years, and so the evolution of this thing was really wild, because in the beginning it was literally, okay, farming dinosaurs, those are herbivores. They eat plants, that makes sense. Okay, carnivores, they eat meat. Okay, they could be ranchers. They could herd their cattle. And then so, because I really had no experience out there, I only had seen the movies, our first reels of the film were literally like T-Rexes in a saloon. They're like, hey, how you doing? And like, Sheriff, you're gonna come out here right now. And you know, it was such a kind of parody of Western movies, and seeing those first reels, we were just like, we have another year and 11 months now, and what are we doing? And then so these research trips, other than the landscapes that we saw, we would meet a lot of families as well, that ranchers and farmers that would inspire, you know, the T-Rexes, because they were literally called, they were kind of like John Lasseter would be like JL, JR, JW, these cowhands, and they were just like these cliches, and then these families that we would meet really would inspire.
And you're presumably having to watch, you know, in terms of how dinosaurs would move, and looking, I mean, that's a whole new research area itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Specifically with the T-Rexes, it was really fun to try to find that weight, but also try to find the concept. I don't know if you felt it in the movie, that these T-Rexes could feel like a rider on the horse. Like the bottom half was almost like, you know, the hind legs of a horse. And what was so funny was that finding that balance was really tough, because early on, all the animators would animate, you know, a horse, that noise that you hear, that is 4 legs, but they only have 2. And so the early animation was really goofy, and almost like Terry Gilliam in The Holy Grail, you know, that.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what are we doing? Oh, this is not going to work. And we would just continue to push, and all this reference to see how do you find the weight, how do you find the character in them, and then the actual, you know, structure of what they were built like. We just had to do a lot of research.
And with every film, it seems, it's just like a sort of staple question almost, because actually every film does seem to push the boundary in animation terms more and more, and this is no exception to that. And I mean, I was looking at things like, for example, the asteroid sequence at the start, the rapids and the movement of the water, the whole landscape, the colours of the landscape, the way the landscape flows, the dinosaurs' texture of the skin. I mean, it's endless how, I mean, can you just tell us about some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's probably our biggest scope of film in terms of scope. And that was something that Pete really challenged us with after we got back from Wyoming. He said, I don't want it to feel like a walk in the park, because a lot of CG films, you sort of have a pretty detailed foreground and midground, and then the background kind of falls off.
It's like a painting.
It's a painting. You kind of cover it with trees and foliage. And he wanted the sense of what it was like when we were out there. So we ended up using a lot of basically Google Maps to start from the actual locations we were at as a starting point. And then we sort of propagated the vegetation with our own trees and rocks and mulch and leaves with procedural techniques. We use volumetric clouds. Again, usually we map paint all our clouds. And Sharon Callahan, our lighting DP, wanted all volumetric clouds, and I was like, no, we don't have enough time to do that. But we came up with some, again, clever techniques. We created a cloud library and sort of repurposed them throughout the film, and that really was effective in terms of actually having the clouds cast accurate shadows on the landscape. And the water, as you say, we have tons of water shots.
Yeah.
And
all in an effort to support the story. Like, for example, the river, we wanted to have an energy to kind of parallel Arlo's journey. So when Arlo is terrified, Arlo is hurt, the river could be roiling. When Arlo connects with nature and begins to connect to Spot, the river can be peaceful. And so that was just an example of how we would try to use everything in nature to be alive in that way. The whole idea of scope, you know, Denise could continue to talk about, like, what is bigger than dinosaurs, and nature kept doing that. And like, you know, like you were talking about the matte backgrounds, CG really is like the Wizard of Oz, where, you know, Dorothy's like, you know, we're off, and she turns around and she walks, and you can feel her walking right up to the Emerald City, painting that wall, and that is computer animation. But I just heard that you guys are doing a David Lean retrospective here, and Lawrence of Arabia is one of our favorite movies, and one of, you know, he was, Freddie Young, the cinematographer that they could capture landscapes so well. There's a shot in Lawrence of Arabia that was so inspiring when I was a kid, of Anthony Quinn, when he's like talking to Peter O'Toole, and he's like, tonight you'll dine with me in Wadi Lam, and there's like a hard cut to this camera push over this mountain valley looking into this, like, this tent city out there. And I remember as a kid, like, the goosebumps of this world feels huge. Can we capture that in CG? Can we capture that feeling that we felt out in those mountains in Wyoming and that area? And we try our best, but I'm just saying that was all the inspiration that we were trying to inject into the
I'm going to try and get some questions from the kids in a moment, but just before I do, just one other thing I wanted to ask you was just in terms of losing the dad. Was that something that you knew right from the start was going to have to happen, or at what point did you realize that was going to need to happen for the story?
Yeah, you know what? We got really excited about trying to tell a really simple archetypal story so that the characters in the world could breathe, you know, and you know, the boy and dog story versus the buddy film, there are some interesting differences that I was finding from, you know, just watching movies all the time. The buddy movie essentially is like two characters going, well, I don't like you, I don't like you. Well, I kind of still don't like you. Well, I have no understanding of what, and then, boy, you just did that. We're kind of, now I understand each other. We're friends, right? In the boy and dog, it's literally like, I don't like you. I'm a dog. I don't care for you. I'm still just an animal here. I'm learning from you. I'm still living my life. And then, like, you have taught me everything. And then, like, you know, it's a different relationship. And so, in understanding what that is, Arlo needs a hole in his life that Spot begins to fill as a catalyst. And so, that little kind of understanding of what that growth could be is where I started from. And then, you know, at Pixar, we talk a lot about our personal lives, and we talk about loss, and we're trying to find a way, can you do this in a way that was respectful, and understand that these are all the different steps that a kid would, you know, that we could connect to as, you know, steps to maturity.